ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has penned a scathing letter to DA Leader John Steenhuisen accusing him of shifting goalposts in negotiations over cabinet positions. In a letter seen by the SABC, Ramaphosa says he informed Steenhuisen that they found the letter from DA Federal Chairperson Helen Zille offensive, condescending and inconsistent with the Constitution. Let's of course discuss this further now with Political Editor Mzwandile Mbeje, who is joining us for the very latest. And Mzwai, of course, when you think about the fact that, all of this is happening as the country is waiting to hear who is going to be part of this government of national unity in terms of cabinet positions. Now this, and one wonders, what is it all signaling?
Well, maybe just let's look at the letters. The one from the DA is dated the 24th, and the one from the President is dated the 25th. So, which basically tells you that there was a discussion that happened about 2 days ago. So, since then, there's been a lot of movement. I can tell you now that yesterday, for example, the ANC was very clear to the DA in its offer when it offered them those six departments, and then and I think about 7 deputy ministers' positions. So that appeared to have been agreed to have been accepted by the DA, and then they were expecting, obviously, to go back to their structure. But at the 11th hour, then the ANC then pulled out the Department of Trade and Industry, which had been part of those departments that had been offered. And then I think that is where we are now. And the DA is going back to its structure, the FedEx, to discuss this. And they are very angry at this. It's very interesting to see what exactly they will do, because they've said, from their point of view, they feel they've kind of like compromised from what they had initially wanted. But now, when they have accepted, they feel the ANC is not playing them the right way.
And let's see if we're able to put up in part some of what the DA had to say, especially on that very note of them feeling that they're being compromised in terms of those positions. And I wonder if we do have that graphic from that letter that was penned by DA Leader John Steenhuisen. And of course, he is talking about the fact that they've made a number of concessions. And he says that, of course, even for them, when they took it back to have this particular discussion, it does, when you read it, it kind of makes him feel like he says they're on the back foot now, somewhat. But then you look at the response by President Cyril Ramaphosa, going back to that letter by, the FedEx leader, and that is, of course, Helen Zille. And he says he actually found that to be condescending. He found it to be unfortunate. And a lot of people were looking at that letter, Mzwai, and they were really, looking at that particular language, which could signal also how difficult things could be behind closed doors.
Yes. Obviously, these are tough negotiations, and I think none of us expected them to be easy. But of course, it's in the how, in where people really are taking note. Difficult and tough as they are, the negotiations, but your approach also matters quite a lot. If you looked at that letter, so which basically almost came as an entitlement in terms of what is entitled to us. I think the ANC made it clear from the word go that this will be a government of national unity where everyone, now we know that in the everyone currently is all those 10 parties. So the feeling was that perhaps the DA is elevating itself to being a coalition partner versus being a government of national unity. And I think that's why the president, when he's responding to John Steenhuisen, is very clear. In fact, his language is quite strong in terms of the response to say, we didn't like what you wrote. And I think that's exactly what informed perhaps the decision by the ANC or the president yesterday to say, okay, we've discussed these things, we are not agreeing, so here is our final offer. And then that final offer of 6 ministers and 7 deputy ministers. And then obviously afterwards, and then certain things did happen. So that's where we are now. So if the FedEx that is meeting this evening decides anything, it will be whether they'll be part of government of national unity or not. So the next few hours will be very crucial, Bongi.
Very crucial. And let's talk about this letter that's on screen right now, Mzwai, because, apart from even the president talking about how condescending he found the language to be, but he further speaks about the fact that for him, it's uncomfortable to have this, such an important conversation via correspondence, because he signals that there's leakages, which have happened.
Yeah, exactly. And also remember, now the person who's got executive authority, and that executive authority allows him to be able to assign those powers. So it's him and him alone in terms of the constitution. Of course, we understand that the ANC didn't get outright majority, but currently he is now duly elected president of the country. So to appoint that cabinet, it is within his rights. Whilst he is consulting with a number of stakeholders, you ought not then to creep into his constitutional mandate. And I think that's why he is responding in that fashion to say, yes, we are negotiating, we are consulting, but you must know that as the president, duly elected, I still have these powers that I have to exercise in line with the Constitution. And
you read the tone in these two letters. It does seem to be, when you look at the DA's letter, John is talking about how he appreciates being accommodated and all of that. And then President Cyril Ramaphosa is coming across talking tough. But Mzwai, there's something else that is behind, all of this, especially when you think about what could be the potential impact of it. Some of the parties that are sitting in that GNU have expressed an interest in being, in leadership roles when it comes to some of the parliamentary committees. What is the impact now on the finalization of who leads those committees if we still don't even have a cabinet and the talks are continuing?
I think the fact that the ANC or the president made that final offer to the DA was basically telling you, Bongiwe, that he is ready to continue to move ahead. At this stage, he has a possibility of a minority government. And I think if they can't then find each other with the DA, I think that's the option that is available to him now.
So they're not going to go to the others?
Remember, you have 9 already. You have 10. You have 9 already, excluding the DA. So, which basically tells you, you already have people that you can work with. He's the president, so he has the numbers. But also, they've made it very clear that the door remains open. Remember, there are still big players out there.
I'm thinking about those in the Progressive Caucus.
And interestingly, from those big players, some of them have made it clear to say, we actually don't mind playing part in the GNU, but we just don't want to play that part if there's so and so. In this instance, the EFF has been very clear to say DA and FF Plus must get out of there, and then we'll happily come in. So now, if the DA then finally decides that it doesn't take part, somehow the door, I think, for the EFF does open. Of course, there's still an issue of FF Plus, and I don't think that can be managed in one way or the other. So in this instance, if, let's say, FedEx takes a decision to say they are not party to the GNU, I don't see the president stopping, moving in terms of announcing his cabinet. He's still going to go ahead with the hope that the engagement will still continue. But of course, the minority government will be formed, whatever happens with others. But the only, perhaps, issue that also will then arise is that the governments of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng will be affected. The leader of the DA, in the form of Helen Zille, Federal Chair, made it clear that the talks at national level will impact on what's happening in KZN and Gauteng. So that is not lost on us. But of course, as I've said, I'm sure the MK is waiting in KZN for anything to happen, because they know they'll be the main beneficiary there. I'm sure they'll be in charge in terms of taking over. Same here in Gauteng. I think the ANC will not run short of options. Particularly, I mean, Panyaza Sophie, the current premier, has very cordial relations with the EFF, and the fact that also MK is being engaged. So if the Grand Coalition, or if the GNU, which includes the 2 biggest parties, doesn't work, so the minority government is an option with the possibility of even drawing more people outside of the DA.
You are not sleeping just yet. It's still going to be long days ahead, especially when you look at, you think about former Finance Minister Tito Mboweni tweeting that picture of Mampela Rampela and Helen Zille, that infamous picture. So it does give us a sense of how things are looking. But Mzwai, thank you so much for your time. Don't go too far, because we may just have developments. That is our politics editor there, Mzwandile Mbeje. And we will, of course, be speaking to someone else on the politics team here on the show. That's Samgele Maseko on Explain and Verify. We're also talking about this issue very, further, especially when you think about all these particular developments, but staying with some of the developments around the GNU. The local currency has lost significant ground against the dollar and other major currencies. Now, the rand has been trading at the 18 rand 40 at the 18 rand 40 mark against the greenback and at 23 rand 30 against the British pound. Now, it's the fourth straight day of currency weakness as investors take a step back from buying South African capital assets. And this follows rumours that talks around the formation of the new cabinet have met with a number of hiccups, particularly in terms of the DA's negotiation around ministerial posts. Markets are in a wait-and-see mode, keenly anticipating President Cyril Ramaphosa's cabinet announcement.